You may have noticed if you've listened to this podcast for any period of time that I don't talk a lot about good and evil, right and wrong. I don't do that because the tradition that I grew up in reminds us that we need to be mindful of what we put on the other side. Life is rarely so simple as to be able to clearly lay out a good side and a bad side. Sometimes it is. I can think of several things right now going on in the world where there's definitely a better side and a worse side. But I still wouldn't necessarily say a good side and a bad side. I can say some sides are definitely evil, though. But why am I so reticent? How do we talk about this without getting stuck in a dichotomy? There's an art to it, and we're going to talk about that today as we walk together down creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am the Christopagan druid and priest of Bridgen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I am a Christopagan druid and sous chef to the Danda.
Today, we're going to be talking about the Sitra Achra, or the other side. I'm probably going to be using the English through the majority of this because, one, it's a bit exoticizing to stick to the Hebrew term constantly, and two, English speakers don't like doing that guttural sound. So we're going to do the simple, the other side. The other side is a catchphrase for the dichotomies that we usually find ourselves on and helps us to remember that there's not always two sides to a thing. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on whatever app you're listening to us on. We do original Christopagan and Druid content 5 days a week. You know, what am I saying? We got a lot of cool stuff planned. All right, let's just get into it. The other side. This is actually born out of a tripartite understanding of things, where you have a left side, a right side, and the middle. And so when we're talking about the other side, the middle generally sees the left and the right as the other side. The left and the right together see the middle as the other side. But the left sees the right as the other side and ignores the middle, generally. Or the right sees the left side as the other side and ignores the middle, generally. Once you see this very simple rubric of how to understand this term, you start seeing that it shows you not only who you're talking about, but your blind spots. It reminds you that more than likely, you're not actually talking about an other side. You're talking about multiple factions that you're lumping together, or that you are multiple factions teaming up against one thing, or that you're just, we're going to ignore all that stuff happening over there to just focus on you. Because this is the problem with dichotomies. Dichotomies never express the truth of reality. Is something alive or dead? We see this as a very cut and dry dichotomy. And then I point at viruses. What is a virus? Is it alive? Is it dead? It's capable of killing, reproducing. It's capable of doing a lot of the things that we say life can do. Is it alive or dead? I don't know. And neither do a lot of the greatest scientific minds in the world today.
So when you run into robots, is a robot alive or dead?
Whoa.
We often say dead. It is animated. It has electrical impulses moving through it to give it life. If you take the electrical impulses out, it ceases to be a robot. And this is why the dichotomy of just life and death falls apart. I love it in Star Wars. Obi-Wan is yelling at Anakin, only Sith think in absolutes. This black and white thinking is problematic.
It is extremely problematic because it gets you to ignore, like I said, one, the shades of gray, because they're usually shades of gray, but also lets you focus in on something that may or may not be the actual problem and helps you ignore everything else. So this terminology I learned when I was studying the Hermetic Kabbalah. We use this term differently than what you'll find in the Jewish Kabbalah, which I have also studied, but do not feel it is my place to teach. You can find a lot of Jewish sources that will use this phrase slightly differently as kind of a code phrase for the realm of the shells or the realm of evil. Whereas in the Hermetic Kabbalah, as I learned it, it is literally whatever you deem on the other side from where you are. It is the other side of the table. And the phrase is very useful because in the model that I was taught it in is we have the 10 spheres of the tree of life. And so there's never an other side. Each of the spheres connected to at least 3, if not 4, of its fellows by the paths. And so to say the other side over there, you have to ignore 2 to 3 other connections that are at play. And 22 connections, 22 paths in total, a myriad of possible connections and configurations that are being ignored in the interim.
Even within each of the connections, there's the imbalance and out of balance. Other side, not to forget that, but it's a huge part of it. Because, like, for instance, we've talked about justice and justice making a lot in the past. And part of that, the other side, is when justice is out of balance.
Justice comes from the sphere of strength, Gevura, which is also the sphere of din, or justice, or God, or fear.
Fear.
Wait a minute. Fear, strength?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we've seen another spectrum inside one of the spheres. And justice is trying to find the balance between strength and fear. So many balances, so many loops, so many things that we're trying to hold together. Life is extremely complicated. And as we are encountering various things, we start labeling them because labels are easy. We as a species love labels. You are a mushroom. You are a fish. Both of those may sound completely ridiculous to you, but, well, we diverged from a lot of the other living things at about the same time as the mushrooms did. So we're all technically kind of mushrooms. We're all fish at one point in our ancestry. So technically we're all fish, which is why, from a science perspective, fish is not a valid taxonomic phrase. Something is not a fish in science. You have various kinds of fish and but nothing is a fish. You won't find fish labeled on the tree of life, because once you do that, everything's a fish. A bird's a fish. You're a fish. I'm a fish. The frog's a fish. The dogs and the cats are fish, and it all gets very confusing because names and labels they're helpful, but they're also easy to mask anything that we want to mask. When I was growing up in the 90s, there was this constant phrase that you would see explored in all manner of media. One person's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And you would see this argument going back and forth, and people that we would later deem terrorists were lionized in the press as freedom fighters who were serving their people until they attacked us. And then we switched the labels on them, which just showed how even these words are in flux. We saw them as heroes and freedom fighters until, oops, you attacked us, so we're going to apply the other label to you now, and you're now a villain.
Because one of the big problems in this way of thinking, and why both of us like the other side part, because in politics, you'll have people go, are you a conservative? Are you a liberal? They'll have this dichotomy, right? You're one or the other. What do you stand for? What do you stand for misses the question of, there are those that just stand against a thing.
Yeah.
A freedom fighter stands for freedom of their people. A terrorist might be standing for the freedom of people. They might be attacking a thing that they stand against. And once you open your mind up to the other side thinking, it frees you up to seeing that there's these other levels. Because somebody might get lumped in as a liberal, or somebody might get lumped as a conservative, when really they're just against a thing. Healthcare, or maybe they're just against more taxes, and it's easy to go, well, you're MAGA, when in reality they're actually against taxes. They're not for a lot of the other stuff that MAGA stands for.
It's why I use the term Imperial Church.
Yes.
My argument is not with the Catholics or the Orthodox or the Lutherans or the Baptists or the Calvinists or the Methodists I could keep listing forever because there are thousands of Christian denominations. My argument's not with any of them. My argument is with this imperial colonization that happened many, many moons ago, 3rd century, that said we contain all truth and all others are evil. This, to me, is absolutely opposed to the teachings of Jesus, who, again, very clearly said, if you're not against us, you're for us. If you are not, you cannot do work in my name and lightly speak evil of me. Jesus in the Gospels is very clear that we can have differing opinions and come from different sources, and it's fine. It's the imperial instinct that wants everything under its own control and domination that is the problem. And so my enemy is the Imperial Church, wherever you find it. And trust me, I have been to a lot of liberal, lefty churches that were Imperial churches. Because if you did not agree with them, you were the enemy.
And Imperial churches isn't just a Christian issue either.
No.
I've seen Wiccan groups that ascribe to imperial structures, to try to point to what would be considered a more extreme,
And when we're talking about the other side and we're recognizing the complexity of the other side is not evil. I understand that desire, just to go back to the Imperial Church, for certainty. I remember having certainty. I remember when I was a Dominionist, very conservative Christian, and that warm blanket of certainty that I had, that I knew I was right. I knew that I was going to heaven. I knew everyone else was going to hell. I knew how the world was going to end. I knew.
As I argued many, many years ago, a horse with blinders on has lots of certainty, but is incredibly vulnerable to all kinds of problems.
And I was.
Yeah.
Because the only way to have that certainty was to ignore so much of the world around me, to ignore so much of what we know is true, to ignore life and a lot of its complexity. Now, I have some simplistic faith still left in me. I do believe that God takes care of us. I do believe that it's not, generally speaking, necessary for us to worry or to be anxious because, yes, the same God who takes care of the birds of the sky and the lilies of the field will take care of us. I have seen that work out in my own life. I also would not be mad at anybody who is anxious and has anxiety, because I've lived through that and it's not easy. I've lived through that loss, that pain, that, it looks like we're going to be homeless now. I've lived through that. I know that terror that gets built into you as you're struggling against all of that. And that's the difference between the Imperial Church and the way I think we should do faith. See, from an Imperial mindset, we would say, no, you have to believe this. And if you don't, you're a bad Christian. You're a bad believer. You don't actually believe. No, because faith always falters. Faith has to be built. It has to be maintained. It has to be fueled. And once you start understanding that most of these things that we like to think of are kind of mile markers on a road, that you're either on this side of it or that side of it, are actually more tanks that need to be filled up or emptied out. Well, it's harder to put that on the other side.
This mindset also helps when it comes to redemption, when it comes to that healing process, that metanoia, the mind changing, that is so healing and so helpful. Because if it's good or evil, it's either good or evil. That is it. It is its state. And what if it's the other side? It's like a line. You stepped over the line. Well, guess what? You can step back. It's literally that easy.
Yeah. Because I hate this idea that people cannot change. And by the way, I do mean that. I hate it. I know some people say that just as a manner of phrase, but no. I have very few things that I can truly say that I hate. This is one of those things, because it is destructive and it is evil to tell people that they cannot change. I know people can change. I have changed. I've changed a lot in my life, some for the good and some for the not so good. And a lot of the not so good are things that are outside of my control because of, my legs and my back and other issues that I have that have made me less mobile and what have you. That's outside of my control. And some of the changes there, I would say, not so much for the best, right? But change happens. Change is the one fundamental constant of the universe. Everything changes. Nothing is ever the same. And to deny that change can happen, to deny that change is this fundamental power in the universe, is just vile to me. Because everyone has the chance of change.
It's a divisive one. It divides.
Yeah.
Also, when you're talking about the other side and change, that becomes, once again, another powerful combination. Because not only can you change yourself, but it is the tool and path for changing others. Because you literally go, come on in, the water's warm. You show how nice your side is. They can move from their side to your side. Because they have to choose to change.
Yeah.
They have to change.
You can't push people.
But I have facilitated many people's change I guess is the proper way to say that, or
Mhm.
change in many people by simply going, the water is wonderful over here. And people went, you know what? I'm going to go over there. That's actually seems really nice.
It's
And
like
they
Paul
came
said.
over and we're like, oh, this is wonderful.
It's like Paul said, I struggle in labor with you until Christ be born in you. That image of
Yeah.
the midwife is very powerful in this because that's what it is. And that is such a powerful way to start understanding the world. Anytime I talk about this idea that people can change, the smarty pantses of the world like to point out, well, what about this great evil monster of history? Could they have changed? Well, now, no, because they usually pick somebody who's dead. And,
Yeah.
that lifetime is over. Hopefully, in their next life, they'll do better. But could they have changed? Yeah, I think that through most of the great tyrants and villains of history, you can see the points that drove them one way or the other. And if something had gone slightly a different way, if something had changed ever so slightly, yeah, maybe things could have taken a very different course of action. Is it guaranteed? No. But I don't believe that anybody is fated to be a monster any more than I believe that anyone is fated to be a saint. I think we all have choices that we make every day, even when those choices are so repeated that they've worn ruts in our soul that we don't even feel the choice anymore. And those are the hardest ones to change. But even those can be changed over time. You actually see it on my YouTube channel. There are two videos that I did a couple months apart from each other. Am I a Christopagan? And yeah, I guess I'm a Christopagan. Because when I first got that term applied to me, I wanted to reject it. I'm somebody who had, in my youth, had intended on being a member of the Christian clergy. I had even, after my conversion to Catholicism, contemplated becoming a Catholic priest. And it's a long story why that didn't happen, and I'm not getting into it now. But this idea of orthodoxy has always been so near and dear to my heart that even as I grew and developed, I did not want to be seen as anything but orthodox in my beliefs. And I went out of my way to write essays and to show how from the tradition, I am still rooted in it. I have not moved. The tradition moved around me. I still think for a lot of things that that's true. But this term Christopagan to me felt like a step too far because I was still clinging on to my last remnants of Imperial faith. I did not want to be seen as a heretic. I did not want to be seen as an apostate. I did not want to be seen as somebody who had departed from the faith. And I knew as soon as I added the word pagan. Now, I had been working with Bridget for a long time. I had been working with Lou. I've been working with the Morrigan. I had been working with a lot of the Tua for quite some time. And I was everything but in word already. But I could find ways to not use the word. And it took a while for me to get to a place where I could. Why? Because I had worn this rut deep down inside me that those are on the other side. See, I'm over on this side, on the Christian side. They're over there on the pagan side. And while I can see how we can take our hands and maybe reach across the divide, talk to each other, we're on other sides. And then I realized, actually, we're on this side and the Empire is over there. The Empire hates them as much as they hate me. And in fact, they hate me because I am too much like them.
This is a lot of what the other half of today's episode title is about. So divided we fall.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest tools of the other side. Bum, 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 is division. It literally is getting people caught up in how is everything divided. As our mandate says, we are peacemakers. We are here to unite, to see the similarities. The other side only sees the differences, sees that division. And that's where a lot of your struggle with that came out of, was that divisionist teaching ingrained in, because as was one of the big tools of the Imperial Church is dividing. They divide things to conquer, but they're using the tools of the other side and being of the other side. This is why you'll so often also hear me talk about light experiments and light and dark, because division is a tool of obstruction. It obstructs the light. If you want to know if it's a good thing or bad thing, are you removing obstructions that are obstructing the light, or are you putting obstructions in and blocking more light and allowing more darkness in?
It's important for us to realize and to really know in our heart of hearts. This goes back to the garden. For all the people that want to get rid of the story of the garden is every day. The story of the garden is every moment where you're in the garden and you have two choices. You have the tree of life, and I hate it when the other tree's name gets shortened, because that's where so many weird analogies and ideas and really bad theology comes from. It's not the tree of knowledge. That's not what they were banned from. It's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's the tree of unity or the tree of division. Which of the two trees are you going to eat from today? The tree that brings things together or the tree that separates things out? And they chose to eat from the tree that separates things out. And behold, they realized they were naked, because they could tell the difference between being naked and clothed. They could tell that they were different genders. They could tell that they were different from one another and that they were different from the animals. And the animals grew to fear them. They were different now. They were different now. They saw the differences. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is a tree of division. It is a tree that cuts everything into this side and that side.
I always like to think of the imagery of watering hole, like out on the Serengeti. The same watering hole. Lions drink from, crocodiles, gazelle drink from. All these animals, they all drink from the same watering hole. They're all in peace because it's life. Yes, later the crocodile might eat a gazelle, the lion might eat a gazelle, but you know what? That's also part of life. There's no judgment involved in it. They're together, they're drinking, they're going about their life. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is when the human steps in and goes, that lion is evil for eating a gazelle, so I'm going to start shooting and killing all the lions around this water hole. That's knowledge of good and evil. That's division. That's the other side.
Yeah, all the animals don't trample the lions. This is where we need to be careful when we're putting people on the other side. It's very easy for us to lump people into a group and to draw a big circle around and say other. You are other. That is other. And sometimes those circles have to be made. Yeah, there's certain brown shirts who historically need to have that circle they so carefully label themselves with added to their clothes so that we know who they are. That we can easily put them to the side and say, yes, other.
Well, I want to jump in and say, the thing is with those lines, they're already there. You are on one side or the other, just by life. When you're putting a circle down, that's when you're talking more, I think you're talking more in terms of sacred spaces. And that's actually a different thing, because the line itself isn't a wall. You want somebody who is, say, a brown shirt, can take off the brown shirt and cross over and go, oh yeah, you know what? I shouldn't have lived like an a-hole and I'm going to live differently now. Because this is part of that redemption process. But if you're in a sacred space, of course, that's a sacred space, but that's a different thing than when you're talking generally in life.
See, Jesus said that blasphemy against the Holy Spirit is the only unforgivable sin. And I would say once you're wearing the brown shirt with the red armband with the evil little circle on it, you have definitely blasphemed the Holy Spirit. I don't know how much redemption there is for someone who has gone to that extreme. And that is an extreme. Like there aren't a lot of things that are close to that extreme of history. Were people in Genghis Khan's army redeemable? Yeah. Were people in the First World War redeemable? Yeah. Were maybe the people who fought for Mussolini redeemable? Yeah. If you were wearing a brown shirt with a red armband, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, there's a certain line that we have to deal with. And that's just because of the immense evil that was done there.
Yeah.
And this is something that we've talked about a lot with, is the word Christian even viable anymore because of all of the evil that has been done in the name of the Christian church? Is that a word that we just need to retire? Like, has it been so dirtied and sullied that the stains can never be washed out?
I think that's where people have trouble with sometimes when dealing with me, because of the fact that of my understanding of the other side, I simply go, yeah, it's simple to me. You're either following Christ's teaching on this side or you're not, and you're on the other side. But it's like two different colored flooring. You can cross any time. You can cross either way anytime. The whole point is be like, hey, look, this other side's so much better. Why don't you come on over? And yes, if I'm setting up a sacred space, going off of what we talked about yesterday's episode, I am the door.
Okay.
And I will bar myself even to protect the sacred space to keep them out. But as far as the other side goes,
Let me say this clearly because I think this is one of those lines that I will never cross. If you don't take that brown shirt off and that red armband off, you are not welcome to cross the line.
What I'm talking about, to cross the other side, you have to actually cross the other side, which means you are no longer ascribing to that hate of others.
Here we have to be very clear about that
Okay.
because we have people putting on those brown shirts again.
This is wolves in sheep's clothing.
Yes, we have people putting those brown shirts on again. That is a line I cannot have. While I'm willing to say that there are a lot of places where the other side is more malleable, there are, as Nietzsche would say it, the preachers of death.
Yes.
And the preachers of death are always on the other side of the line. Cannot continue to be one of the preachers of death and for me to have any communion with you.
Yeah. And to that point too, that's also where, for myself, being mindful of that just because you got up day one and said, I'm going to be brown shirt, got up day two and said, oh, I've had a complete change of heart, I'm going to take it off. Day three, if you get up and put that shirt back on, you're back on the other side.
Yes.
You crossed over and you crossed back. Because that's the thing is, yes, people change, but...
Yes, but I think we need to be very, very clear that there are some things that are always on the other side of that line.
Yes, this goes back to the earlier episodes when we were talking about those core things.
Yes.
There are those core things that you're either on this side of the core things or you're on that side.
And that is on the other side.
And that is on the other side.
Permanently on the other side.
Yeah.
I do not have to go to you. You have to leave that side. You have deemed yourself anathema to humanity at that point. And God save your soul. I don't have a lot of hard lines like that.
No.
This is probably the hardest line that I have, which you can tell by how vociferously I am struggling to maintain it. There is, if there are three people sitting at a table and one of them is wearing a brown shirt with a red armband, there are four people sitting at the table with a brown shirt and a red armband.
Yeah. Because you're in communion with them. You're breaking bread with them.
Some things are just beyond the pale, but there are very few things that are truly beyond the pale. And that's one of them. And I wish I could say the word, but most platforms will take you down or punish you in the algorithm if you do say the word. That's why I'm being flowery in my language about these folk, because we want this to get out as widely as possible. So yeah, sometimes the lines have to be hard and fast.
Yeah, they're hard as in, they're not, those core things are core things. That does not move. A person's heart on the subject matter of the core thing can change. They can give up the hate.
Yes.
They can let go hating others.
Yes.
And, stop their murderous ways.
This is actually an argument that's happening very publicly now in one of the largest media companies that we have right now in the United States, where one person feels like it's okay to walk across that line and everybody else is like, no.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not. You're on the other side now.
Yeah, once you've sat at that table, I mean...
Because, yes, there is redemption and stuff, but that redemption is a process as well. And,
you have to be very, very careful. And this is the struggle. And this is why this is a topic we're probably going to return to on numerous occasions, because it's a hard thing to talk about. Things are not as simple as this is a criminal. I don't think that a lot of the words that we use and often set up as the other side are as simple as we make them. But some are. This is the real struggle with understanding these lines and these limits, is making sure that those things that we are saying are hard and fast actually are hard and fast, or need to be hard and fast, and aren't just something that we are making the other side just to make ourselves feel better.
This is also where primary, secondary beliefs come in. As I would say, what is core, what is secondary, is that there's a lot of wiggle room with secondary stuff.
Oh, yeah.
As there should be in life. But there are those essential things that are the essential things.
I'm curious where you all stand on all this. Please don't use any of the language that would cause problems. You can tell what words we're shying away from here. But I would love to know what you think about all this. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say that you can leave a comment they won't let us know. So leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head over to creationspath.com, click on chat, and there you can leave a comment and we will be notified and be able to actually have a conversation with you. While you're there, if you have a few dollars you can pass our way, you can think about joining a membership. We have annual and monthly memberships available over there. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both. And as we are heading out, O Saint Michael the Archangel, the angel of compassion, whose sword cuts between this and that, whose blade is the very blade of discernment, help us to see the path forward, that we may know the dragons on which we should stand and those whom we should embrace. Amen.
Amen.